The Mediterranean Sea has always been a place of exchange of cultures and civilizations. Actually, the merchants used to sail across the Mediterranean Sea, making their way through Africa and Europe. It is a wealthy region in many ways. However, it also has a lot of inequalities, and it's also suffering a lot from increasing climate change impacts. It's becoming one of the fastest warming seas on the planet.
In our case, we contribute precisely on explaining how our project and the community of projects contribute to some of the policies that the Green Deal is tackling and addressing to Europeans.
The efficient building community is focusing on bringing a Mediterranean perspective in the energy efficiency policy in Europe. So, for instance, in the Mediterranean, cooling needs rather than heating needs drive most of the energy consumption in buildings. Buildings are made differently than the rest of Europe in terms of materials and structure.
So the Beta Tech Center where I'm based, it's located in the city of Vic. It's a rural area in the center of Catalonia. And my role within the Interreg MED is being the coordinator of the Green Growth community. We've been leading this community for 6 years already, and we seek to promote green and circular economy in the Mediterranean region.
So the clean energy for all Europeans is a strategy that calls to energy systems to shift into climate neutrality. And that requires a huge involvement of governments and businesses to reduce drastically emissions from their processes, but also the citizens to engage into a more sustainable and resilient consumption of energy.
Why is the building sector a priority as a part of the system integration in Europe? Basically, there are three main reasons for this. The first one is that buildings are complex systems themselves, so a system approach is natural, and they are a system which is becoming more and more relevant. And that brings me to the second reason. Buildings are the place where most households consume the most of their energy. So it's their natural place where to tackle energy efficiency renovation. Third, in Europe, most of the buildings are old. 85% of the 220 million buildings that are in Europe are older than a century. So the older the building, the more likely that they were not built to very efficient energy standards, so they are more likely to need renovations.
If we want to decarbonize the economy, it's not enough to change the way how we produce or we consume energy, for instance, because decarbonization, the economy, it's really a complex path. So we have to take into account the whole value chain of a product, of any product that consumes energy, and see the different steps in the life cycle and see how we can reduce the resources that are needed to produce that type of product.
By 2050, more than 80% of the electricity will come from renewable energy sources. That's why it's relevant to have the idea of the transition, the energy transition, to focus on how to establish an energy model more integrated, well distributed, and participated by citizens. So for that reason, it's important to not only involve citizens and put it in the center of attention, but also engage them as consumers and as citizens.
The renovation wave strategy basically aims to renovate the European building stocks by doubling the renovation rate in the next 10 years and make this building stock a safer, healthier, more energy efficiency, more digitally connected, and even more comfortable place for Europeans to live, while also boosting the economy, because the building sector is very labor intensive and therefore is the perfect place to put financial resources to support the economy in its effort to recovery from the pandemic crisis. There is an inner beauty, also an economic beauty in that while you help the environment, you help also yourself, the economy, it's easier to pay your bills, so there is intrinsic potential of having the right motivation in place.
Given the fact that construction industry produces over 35% of the total amount of waste produced in Europe and also generates a huge amount of greenhouse emissions, this sector has been considered as one of the key sectors to tackle in the Circular Economy Action Plan. In the building sector, we have to look at the entire value chain and where energy is used in the different steps of buildings. For instance, energy is used to extract the raw materials for construction, later on for transforming them, and after to transport them into the building place. We already have to think on an efficient way on how to disassemble it in order not to demolish it, so we can recover, reuse, and recycle the materials that have been used for construction. So having this clear in mind, it's easy to understand the role of resource efficiency, circular economy approaches and practices, and design thinking even in the building sector.
So first of all, we need to have strategies to reduce drastically the CO2 emissions. And for that, we need to encourage energy efficiency solutions, including zero building emissions, and deploy renewable energy and electricity. Secondly, we need to encourage and embrace clean, safe, and connected mobility, competitive industry, and circular economy. As well as deploying a smart connection among territories. And that means not only to have the adequate infrastructures, but also the services required to have a good interconnectivity. So finally, benefiting from bioenergy to tackle the CO2 emissions remaining through carbon storage solutions. When people connect and go forward one idea, we achieve wonderful objectives.
First one is facilitating the access to finance in a way that is consistent with the conditions in the Mediterranean countries, fostering the economic circularity of the material used in the buildings, respecting also the local way of buildings, fostering digitalization and smart readiness of building also helps because it integrates energy efficiency into the system in a much more efficient way.
This second Circular Economy Action Plan presents a new initiative on the entire value chain of different products. So it tackles how these products are designed already from its initial steps, then how different circular economy processes can take place, and also the way that waste can be reduced and the resources can be maintained in the European economy as long as possible.
So I think it's urgent to build a more resilient future for the Mediterranean. We need to provide the scientific evidence, of course. We do have the technical capacities to do so, and we have the technological tools. But we must act collaboratively in order to catalyze a system change.